I never tell you this, not in school, not in movies, not even in most relationships. Because once you understand this, your entire perspective changes and suddenly everything starts to make sense. See, most men think attraction is about looks, money, or status. And yes, those things can help, but they're not what creates deep emotional pull. The kind of attraction that makes someone think about you when you're not even there. The truth is, women don't fall for what you say. They fall for what they feel when they're around you. And most men completely miss this. They try to impress. They try to prove themselves. They try too hard. And in doing that, they lose the very thing that creates attraction. Because attraction isn't built on effort. It's built on energy. Let me explain. There's a silent language happening in every interaction. It's not your words, it's your presence. The way you carry yourself, the way you respond or don't respond, the way you make her feel without trying. That's what she remembers. And here's where it gets interesting. The more you chase, the less valuable you appear. But the moment you become centered, grounded, and emotionally in control, everything shifts. Because now you're not seeking validation, you're giving an experience. And that's rare. Most people today are desperate for attention. Scrolling endlessly is seeking approval. But the man who doesn't need that, he stands out instantly. Now listen carefully. This part is important. Women are naturally drawn to emotional strength, not aggression, not arrogance, but calm, quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything because it already knows its worth. When you speak less, but say meaningful things, when you don't react emotionally to every situation, when you stay composed even under pressure, that creates mystery. And mystery creates attraction. But there's something even deeper, emotional safety. This is where most men fail. They think being attractive means being dominant all the time. But real attraction is a balance. It's strength combined with understanding. A woman needs to feel like she can open up without being judged. And when she does, and you actually listen, not to respond, but to understand, that's when connection happens. That's when she starts to trust you. And trust is what turns attraction into something deeper. Now here's a mistake you need to avoid. Never put someone on a pedestal. The moment you treat her like she's above you, you lower your own value. Instead, see her as an equal. Respect her, but respect yourself more. Because the strongest position you can be in is not needing anyone to complete you. You're already complete. And when you come from that place, you stop trying to impress. You start being real. And real is powerful. Let's talk about attention. Attention is one of the most valuable things you can give, but most men give it away for free. Constant texting, always available, always replying instantly. There's no challenge, no space, no anticipation. And without anticipation, there's no excitement. Sometimes less is more. Give her space to wonder, to think about you, to miss you, because attraction grows in absence, not constant presence. But don't confuse this with playing games. This isn't about manipulation. It's about balance. You have your life, your goals, your purpose, and she becomes part of that, not the center of it. That's what makes you attractive. Now let's go deeper. Confidence doesn't come from pretending. It comes from self-respect, from keeping your word, from working on yourself, from building a life you're proud of. Because when you respect yourself, others feel it. You don't have to say anything. It shows in your posture, your tone, your decisions. And that kind of confidence can't be faked. Here's something most people won't tell you. Rejection is part of the process. Not everyone will like you. And that's okay, because the goal isn't to attract everyone. It's to attract the right one. And the right one won't require you to change who you are. They'll appreciate you for it. So stop chasing approval. Start building value. Become the kind of man who doesn't need validation because he already knows his worth. And when you reach that point, you don't lose because you're no longer playing the same game. You're operating on a completely different level. And that changes everything. But there's another layer most men never reach. And this is where things truly change, because attraction doesn't just come from how you act around her. It comes from how you live your life when she's not even there. Think about that. What do you do when no one is watching? How do you spend your time? What are you building? Because a man with purpose is naturally attractive, not because he's trying to be, but because he's focused on something bigger than attention, and that focus creates a different kind of energy. You're not constantly checking your phone, you're not waiting for replies, you're not overthinking every message, you're moving forward. That forward motion pulls people toward you, because most people are stuck in routines, stuck in doubts, stuck in the need for constant reassurance. But when someone meets a man who is clear, driven, and calm, it feels different. It feels rare. Now here's something deeper: silence. Most men are afraid of silence. They feel the need to fill every moment with words, to keep conversations going, to avoid awkwardness. But silence, when used correctly, is powerful, because silence creates tension, not uncomfortable tension, but emotional curiosity. It makes her wonder what you are thinking. It gives space for feelings to grow. And when you're comfortable in silence, it shows confidence, because you're not trying to impress, you're simply present. Let's talk about emotional control. This is one of the most attractive traits a man can develop. If every little thing affects your mood, if you get jealous easily, if you react out of frustration, it shows a lack of control, and that breaks attraction instantly. But when you stay steady, even when things don't go your way, that creates respect, because now you're not controlled by emotions. You control them, and that level of stability feels safe. Now understand this clearly. Being emotionally strong doesn't mean being cold. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you don't lose yourself. You can feel deeply without becoming weak. You can care. Care it means you can care without becoming dependent. That balance is rare, and rarity is what creates value. Another mistake many men make is trying to be perfect, saying the perfect lines, acting the perfect way, trying to avoid mistakes at all costs. But perfection is boring, predictable, and predictable kills attraction. What actually creates connection is authenticity, being real, being honest, even being a little imperfect, because that's human, and humans connect with realness, not perfection. So stop overthinking, stop trying to calculate every move. Just be grounded in who you are and let things flow naturally. Now let's talk about standards. This is something you must have, because if you accept everything, you stand for nothing. Know what you want, know what you won't tolerate, and be willing to walk away if those standards aren't met. Because walking away is power, not because you're consenting, but because you respect yourself enough to not settle. And when a woman sees that you're not afraid to leave, she values your presence more, because now she knows your presence more, because now she knows you're there by choice, not by need. And choice is always more attractive than desperation. Here's another truth: energy is contagious. If you're negative, complaining, always focusing on problems, that energy spreads and people feel it. But when you're positive, focused, calm, and driven, is a energy spreads too, and people want to be around it. So protect your energy. Be mindful of what you consume, what you watch, who you spend time with, because all of it shapes you and you become what you repeatedly expose yourself to. Now let's go even deeper. Scarcity, not fake scarcity, not playing hard to get, but real scarcity, a life that is full, a schedule that matters, is a mindset that isn't centered around one person. Because when your life is full, you naturally become less available, and that increases your value, not because you're trying to create distance, but because you actually have things going on. And that's the key difference. It's real, not forced, and people can feel that authenticity. Now, here's something powerful to remember: attraction isn't something you chase, it's something you become. You don't run after it. You build yourself into someone who naturally attracts it, through discipline, through growth, through self-respect. And when you reach that level, you stop worrying about outcomes because you trust yourself. You know that no matter what happens, you'll be fine. And that confidence is magnetic. It draws people in without effort. So instead of asking, how do I make her like me? Start asking, how do I become a man I respect? Because when you respect yourself, everything else follows. And here's the final truth. The game was never about winning someone else. It was about mastering yourself, your mindset, your emotions, your direction in life. Because once you have that, you don't lose in relationships, not in life, because you've already built something that can't be taken away. And that is the real power. But there's still one thing that separates men who understand all of this from those who actually live it: consistency. Because knowing these principles is not the same as becoming them. Anyone can hear this message and feel motivated for a moment. Anyone can say, yeah, that makes sense. But very few actually apply it every single day. And that's where the real difference is made. Because attraction isn't built in one conversation. It's not created in a single moment. It's built over time, through repeated behavior, through consistent energy, through who you are again and again. If one day you're confident and the next day you're insecure, it creates confusion. And confusion weakens attraction. But when you're steady, when your mindset stays the same regardless of the situation, that creates trust, because now you're predictable in the best way, not boring, but grounded. And grounding is rare in a world full of emotional chaos. Now, think about this. Most people react based on how they feel in the moment. If they're happy, they act one way. If they're upset, they act another. They're controlled by circumstances. But a man who is in control doesn't let temporary emotions dictate permanent behavior. He feels everything, but he chooses his actions carefully. And that level of discipline is incredibly attractive because it shows maturity. It shows strength. It shows that you're not just another guy reacting to life. You're someone. Whoa, is Ho leads it. Now let's talk about patience. In today's world, everything is instant. Instant messages, instant replies, instant gratification. But real connection takes time. And if you rush it, you break it. Trying to force attraction, trying to speed things up, usually does the opposite. It creates pressure, and pressure pushes people away. But when you allow things to unfold naturally, when you give space for emotions to develop, that's when it becomes real. Because now it's not forced, it's genuine. And genuine always lasts longer. Here's another key point: detachment. This doesn't mean you don't care. It means your happiness is not dependent on the outcome. Whether she stays or she leaves, you remain the same, centered, focused, unshaken, because your life doesn't revolve around one person. And that kind of independence is powerful. It removes fear, fear of losing, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. And when fear disappears, confidence takes its place. Now imagine interacting with someone without fear. No overthinking, no second guessing, no need for approval, just pure presence. That's when you become your most attractive self, because now you're free, free to express, free to connect, free to be real. And people are naturally drawn to that freedom because most don't have it. They're trapped in their own thoughts, their own insecurities, their own need to be liked. But you're different, and difference creates attraction. Now, here's the final layer: self-awareness, understanding yourself deeply, knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, your triggers, and working on them. Because the more you understand yourself, the less you're controlled by unconscious behavior. You stop reacting automatically, you start responding intentionally, and that changes everything because now you're not still living on autopilot. You're living with purpose, with clarity, with direction. And when all of this comes together, your energy changes, your presence changes, your entire way of being changes. And at that point, you don't need tricks. You don't need lines. You don't need strategies, because you've become the kind of man that naturally attracts without chasing, without forcing, without losing himself in the process. And that's the ultimate goal, not just to attract someone, but to become someone worth being with. Because when you reach that level, you don't just win in relationships, you win in life. And that's something most people will never fully understand.